Hey guys, okay, so to get us started into our political unit, we need to go over some specific vocabulary that we are going to be talking about throughout this whole unit. So it's really important for us to start with these terms that we see here. So I've shared this file with you, and you're going to take this and put it into your Google folder, but I need to explain these because you need to really understand what all of these terms are. Okay, so I'm going to mark up my notes. If you would like to do that as well, you can. But you don't have to, but I do need you to listen to this whole video, but I'm going to try to make it quick, okay? So the first term that we need to talk about is state. Okay, this is different than just like the state of Texas that we live in, okay, or the state of Oklahoma that's right to the north of us. Okay, a state, when we talk about a state during this unit, we are talking to a place that has specific boundaries and a place that has a government. Okay, so it's going to make laws for themselves within their boundaries. Okay, so what's going to help us think about this is state with a capital S, okay? So when we see the term state, we're really talking about a country, okay? So not just like the states, the United States of America, we're talking about a whole country, okay? So when we talk about the term state, we're really just talking about a whole country. I wrote out to the side here land, right? A country has to have land, okay? So I'm going to draw a picture out in the left-hand margin to kind of help you visual learners, okay? So land for us is just going to be a square, okay? Another thing that will be important is that with states, remember how in the very first video that we watched for the unit, we talked about how it's important for other countries to recognize you as a real country, okay? And so that is important here for a state. So we're going to write out to the side that you have to be recognized by other states, okay? Some examples of states are really, that's going to be any country in the world, okay? It's going to be a state. So like Canada or Mexico, right? Or Japan. Truly any country is going to be a state, all right? So lots of examples there. You should understand that, okay? The next term we need to talk about is a nation. So sometimes you'll hear maybe like the news talk about different nations, and sometimes they refer to nations as like actual countries, but that's not technically correct. Nations refer to people, okay? They refer to the people of a place, really, okay? So nation is not a place. A nation is a group of people, okay? And these people are going to be ethnically, culturally, or linguistically related, okay? So groups of people that could be like related. A good example of a nation would be the Japanese, okay? Because culturally and ethnically and linguistically, they come from the same background, okay? And they're very united. They have basically like a similar background, okay? So for our little image out to the side, we're just going to draw some stick people, okay? So here's my little stick figures to help me know that a nation is referring to people, okay? Not too difficult. All right, next thing, a nation state, all right? This isn't a trick question. A nation state is truly the first two things that we just talked about, okay? It is a group of people. Remember, state is capitalized. So it is a group of people with land, okay? It is important to know that there is not one completely 100% full nation state, okay? Because when we're talking about a nation state, we're talking about a group of people, of similar people who have the same background, the same history, the same language, all of that. within their own borders, okay? And today that's not 100% true for any country totally, but there are two countries that come pretty close to it, okay? And these examples of nation states are going to be like the Japanese and Japan, and Iceland is another really good example too, okay? So Iceland and Japan are the closest countries or states today that are closest to nation states, okay? That means most of their inhabitants, I think like Japan is like 95% Japanese people. They have very strict regulations on who can migrate there. You can't really just like up and move to Japan and like live there forever because they have really strict rules, because they're very proud of being a nation state. They're proud of being culturally related, okay, that you can read right there in the definition. They're proud of being culturally related to each other, okay? So for my little image over here on the left side, I'm going to draw my people again, right? Because we're still the same group of people related, but now we have land, okay? So it's going to look just like that. The next thing we need to talk about is a stateless nation, okay? So again, not tricky, but we're talking about a nation, right? So a group of people, but if you're stateless, that's going to mean that you don't have any land, right? You don't have a country, okay? So this is going to be people without land, okay? So really sad. They might want their own territory, they might want their own land, but they don't have it yet, okay? An example of this is going to be the Kurds. Some of us looked at this before. We might have talked about this before in class too, but the Kurds are a group of people. They're a nation, okay, that are related. They have the same language and the same religion. And they live in the Middle East, okay? But they live in a lot of different countries, but they're a united group of people, but they just don't have their own country. They would like their own country. They live in a place that they call Kurdistan, but that's not a real country yet, okay? So they just live in this area that's spread out among a lot of other countries, but they don't have their own land, okay? So my little picture that I'm going to draw over here is my group of people, right? Here's my group of people, but they're just dreaming about some land, okay? They would like to be their own land, or they would like to have their own country, but they don't have it yet. Okay? The next term we need to talk about is a multinational state, okay? So we know what nation is, and we know what state is, but multi means what? It means many, right? So we're talking about many nations in a land, right? In a country, okay? So for our little short description here, we're going to say that there are different groups of people. Of people in a land, right? So we're talking about a country that has more than one nation, right? So a lot of the time, most countries will be multinational states, okay? So for my little picture over here, I'm going to draw 3 people, but I am gonna draw some blonde hair on this guy, a red hat on this guy, and maybe like a green dress on this person. Okay, so maybe all of these represent different cultures, okay? But guess what? They're all living within the same country, okay? So all 3 of those guys are from different backgrounds, but they live in the same country, okay? So some examples here are going to be like us, right? There's a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different people who live in the U.S., right? We are considered a melting pot, right? Canada could be one, right? Them too. And the UK, right? A lot of countries have a lot of different people living in them. All right, so that one is pretty easy to remember. Okay, now sometimes within a multinational state, you can have places called an autonomous region, and that is just an area within a state that has a lot of like self-government or freedom. Usually this happens in like very large states or very large countries where a government might be over a lot of people, right? But you might have one small group that is like trying to maybe break off, or they want to maybe rule themselves, and so they might be demanding more freedom. And so usually autonomous regions will happen because the larger government is just trying to like keep the peace sometimes. Okay, so I'll draw my little peace sign there. And so they'll grant this certain region or this certain group of people in this little area the right to have their own police system, or whatever it may be. Okay, so an example of this is happening actually in a couple of places in Russia, where there are smaller groups that want to break off and become their own country. So they might be like stateless nations. Remember that term from a few words ago? So they might be a stateless nation who want to be their own country, but because Russia doesn't want to give up that land, or they don't want to go to war over it, they have just said, okay, you group of people, you can have your own certain freedoms, but you're still going to remain in our larger country or our larger state. Okay. So no picture there for that, okay? The next term that we have is a multi-state nation, okay? This is different than a multinational state. You have to look at the terms here, okay? So multi, we know, means many, right? State means land. Nation, one group of people. So this is a group of people, one group of people, right, with many lands, right, or many countries, okay? So this is when one group feels united to each other, but yet they are spread across several countries, okay? So for my example, my little picture over here, okay, here's my group of people, but they are divided into 4 different countries, okay? We still see that the people are united. They're the same kind of people, right? They're still my little blue people, but they are within 4 different lands or 4 different countries, okay? So again, the best example here is going to be the Kurds that are split between, they're in Syria, they're in Iran and in Iraq and Turkey. Okay, so they are split between all of those countries, but instead of like identifying more as Iranian or more as like a Turkey citizen, they would identify more as being Kurds, like Kurdish, instead of being Syrian, okay? So that's a really good example there, is for the Kurds to be a multi-state nation, okay? Next thing we need to talk about is nationalism. You have most definitely heard of the term nationalism, right? It usually refers to like the feelings of attachment that someone might feel towards a place, or probably more so towards a group of people. Since nation is really in the term, that is where we're gonna hone in on. Okay, so nationalism is going to be this strong sense of like community and attachment towards other groups of people, and this will usually be very strong usually like in a nation state. They're very proud of being unified. Okay, so my little picture that I'm gonna draw over here is our flag. Okay, so I know you guys don't remember because you were just babies, or you might not have even been born yet, but when 9/11 happened, okay, in 2001, after all of the horrible things that happened that day, there was this strong sense of nationalism, of being very proud to be American, okay, and people were proud, and they were uniting with each other, okay, they were uniting together, this group of people, and they felt very proud to be American, okay, and so nationalism is just that feeling of attachment, of being very proud in a group of people, and feeling that sense of belonging, and that pride. The next term is ethnicity, which is really just a group's culture. Okay, so it's talking about a group of people's cultural traits, like their traditions, their customs, their language, their religion, and then their ideas about their ancestry. Okay, so like where they're coming from, and a ethnicity is going to be united within all of those things. Okay, all right. The last two that we need to talk about is a centripetal force and a centrifugal force. They sound similar, but they're very different, okay? A centripetal force is a force that unifies people. So it's going to bring people together. So I'm going to draw two arrows going together, okay? So it's going to be anything that's going to unite people. And it's easy for me to remember this is because there's a P in the term centripetal. So P for me is positive, okay? So a positive thing is that it's going to unite groups of people, okay? A force that's going to unite people together. So that could be common languages, common religions, anything like that, or belief systems, whatever people, really it can be anything to unite a group of people. The opposite of this is a centrifugal force, and that's going to be something that divides people. So my arrows are going to go away from each other here, okay? So with this one, there is a F in the middle of centrifugal. So F is like a fight, okay? So if someone's fighting, that's going to be a reason to pull apart from each other, right? It's going to divide people. And so this could be opposite of centripetal forces. So maybe people are differing on their religions, or who they believe should be in charge of the government, or anything like that. Okay, so forces that would cause people to break apart. The last thing I want to do over on the right side in that right hand margin, I want to give us some real examples of this, like in terms of Wakeland. Okay, I think that might help you guys get a better understanding of what these terms look like if we were to put it like at a very small scale level of Wakeland. Okay, so if we're thinking about a state is the land, right? It's the country. So if we're thinking about Wakeland, the term state would refer to the Wakeland campus, right? That's our land, right? Our place of being. We go to Wakeland, all right? That's the land. The nation, the people that are involved at Wakeland, that the people there are going to be, that's going to be like the student body, right? It's going to be you guys. You are the people. You guys are united, and that we all go to Wakeland, right? So that's where we are culturally, in this example, we're culturally alike because we are united around Wakeland. That's like our heritage, okay? So a nation state then would be the people with the land, okay? So in this example then, it would be the students Wakeland, right? The students on campus is what that is, okay? Now, right now, this is kind of funny because we're not technically on campus, right? So technically, we are without our land. We can't be on campus, okay? So therefore, we are students then, right? Because we're the nation, we're students. I'm going to say stuck in quarantine. Is that how you spell that? I think it is. Okay, so we are stuck. We are still united because we are Wakeland students, but we are stuck in other places, okay? Or and a different example of this could be like sometimes they bus Frisco High students over to Wakeland to go to some certain electives that like Wakeland has that Frisco High doesn't offer, okay? So in that scenario, it would be like a Frisco student who was at Wakeland, right? Because they are their own nation. Frisco High would be their own nation. Liberty would be their own nation. Independence would be their own nation, right? Those are all different groups of people that identify with that school. So that would be their nation. But when that Frisco High student comes over to Wakeland for their elective class, then that's kind of like a fish out of water, right? Like he or she, that student from Frisco would be on our campus or in our country, right? So they identify with being a Frisco High student, but they're actually on our campus or on our land, okay? So both of those examples kind of work. It's kind of funny right now that we are a stateless nation because we can't be at school. We can't be in our land and on our campus right now, okay? The next example is a multinational state. So this is where there's lots of groups of people in one land, okay? Some of you guys will start taking classes over at the CTE Center next year. And the CTE Center is a really good example of a multinational state, right? All the kids from the different campuses or from the different high school campuses get bused over to the CTE Center. So all of those different groups of people, right, of nations who identify with being at their own high school, right? Like we are proud to be at Wakeland, right? Just like other kids are proud to be at Liberty or proud to be at Frisco or whatever the case may be. All of those different nations then are united in one land, aka the CTE building. That would be the state, but then there's lots of different groups of people who come there during the day, okay? The next example, is an autonomous region. So if we're thinking about Wakeland and FISD, Frisco ISD as a whole, FISD could be considered like the top dog here, right? And then the little umbrella organization, here's my umbrella, okay? This could be Wakeland, right? Because like right now we are all in different places right now because of being out, right? Of being not really quarantined yet, but we have to be at home, right? And so Frisco ISD has been sending us lots of emails. We have all of these big rules that we have to follow within the district, but then Wakeland specifically has been given some freedom to do different things within the realm of FISD big policy, okay? So in this example, Wakeland or Independence or Heritage or Memorial or any of those other schools, there are maybe some little differences there in how they're handling this whole being gone scenario, okay, being away from school. And so we have, we could be considered an autonomous region because we're given some freedom in how we're choosing to do specific things, okay? But our larger government, aka Frisco ISD, still has the majority like control. We're still under and we're still a part of Frisco ISD, okay? The next one is a multi-state nation. This one is a little bit of a long shot, but I want you to think about all of the schools, like the middle schools and the elementary schools that feed into Wakeland. Okay, so if you have younger siblings that are in some of the other schools right now, think about your feeder pattern, right? We have I think someone told me one time that like Fisher feeds into Cobb, and Cobb Middle School feeds into Wakeland, right? So technically, well, like hopefully everybody like stays in the district, right? And Fisher will eventually feed into Wakeland. So think about all of those little kids from elementary school to middle school, Fisher and Cobb kids that will eventually feed into Wakeland. So they're Wakeland nation, right? Because one day they'll go to Wakeland and we'll be proud to be Wakeland students. But right now they're spread across other campuses, or they're spread across other states, right? So we have many states involved for future Wakeland people, right? For future Wakeland, like our nation. Okay, so it's a little bit of a stretch, but it kind of works, right? And then let's see, nationalism. Oh, nationalism is easy, right? So if we're thinking about nationalism within our Wakeland example, nationalism is just going to be school spirit, right? We are proud to be from Wakeland, right? Like we love Wakeland. All right, and then going along with that, ethnicity would just be like the culture. So what are some things that represent the culture of Wakeland? Maybe it is like Wolverine Wally. Or maybe the fight song that you hear all the time, right? Or maybe it's like pep rallies, right? That could be like a cultural trait, right? So all of those things kind of represent like the culture of Wakeland, okay? And then we kind of talked about centripetal and centrifugal forces, but that doesn't really go along with our Wakeland example, okay? So that gives you some kind of examples there for how it looks like at a very small scale, like a Wakeland scale. But then you have your actual definitions here too. Okay, so take a picture of this and upload it to your Google folder.